tuning in to Three Minds, One Mic. It's the Regular Folk Talk Show podcast, where we talk with regular folks about their opinions and perspectives on life and current events. With me always is Anthony and Radu, and we're glad that you tuned in. Hi, welcome back again to another episode of Three Minds, One Mic. Glad you all can make it again. Good to see you. We are missing Anthony for now, I hope. He did run into a little bit at work. Busy season, I guess, and he had to stay a little bit later, but we're hoping he pops on when he gets the chance. So for now, it's just me and Radu, and we do have another guest that we're going to get to. We've been really blessed to have some guests all in a row like this, and it's been fun and exciting for us. So, Radu, how you been today? How you doing, sir?
Hey, buddy. Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good.
All right, man. It was a good week, and got some more content out, and it's going really well. So
nice.
Some interesting stuff going on in the world right now. Right, we got the Iran stuff that came right at the beginning of the more Epstein files going out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and who's perfect to talk about that with than our guest again is Tom. He joined us before, and he's the kind of guy that knows a little bit about everything, and it's just real interesting to talk to. So without further ado, Tom, welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Appreciate being back.
Of course, man. Of course. How you been? What's going on in life?
Doing pretty good. And I got a little pen and paper here so I can take notes. So like we did last time, I'll whatever I offer as information, I'll be able to make sure I get some sources and stuff to be able to get that for you for the page.
Sweet. Yeah, and we'll put it in the link in the description like we did last time as well. So tune into that. That'll be cool. Before we do get started, I do want to let everybody know I do appreciate you tuning in, especially on the shorts and online. But I do ask that you like, subscribe, share, follow on Instagram, on TikTok, Facebook. We are trying to spread out. And of course, if you ever want to be on the show, you can definitely go to Instagram, 3 Minds, 1 Mic, drop me a message, ask to be on, and we can go from there. But we'll welcome any opinion, anybody, anywhere, anytime. Well, within reason. We do have to make it work for everybody, but drop me a message, and we'll see if we can get you on the show, and we'd love to have you. So anyway, that's done. So Tom, you're coming in at a good time. You know, we just got a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. Some I believe to be major distractions, some to be power plays, some to be others. But as you did tell us on your last visit with us, that not everything is black and white. And I've kept that in mind, and I've referenced it quite a bit because it's very easy to go, yeah, this is just the way it is. But no, there is a lot more to other things. So definitely happy to have you back to go through some of that gray matter with us to help improve our own gray matter and get some facts on some things, or at least, you know, a better rabbit trail to go down if nothing.
Yeah.
So let's start with Iran. What's going on there? Do you think that's a distraction? Do you think that's a legit I mean, those of us that like close to 50, we know the Iraq stuff. We know some other stuff before that. You know, there's a lot of power plays to do what we need to do as a country governmentally that doesn't always line up with what they're telling us. So are we in that same circle now? Are we in that same cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can start present and then kind of like go back a little bit. And currently what's happening is there's a lot of misinformation. I believe that's the misinformation is intentional. And because you have the president saying one thing, you have the Department of War saying another, then you have politicians saying something else that are in support of it. Because they've been kind of dancing around it. You know, but this is like a tried and true thing of this administration where, you know, he'll say something off the wall and, you know, everyone will be like, that's not what he meant. And then he'll come out like a day later, reporters will be like, hey, they're saying you didn't mean this. And then he'll be like, oh, no, that's what I meant. You know, I meant that exactly. And then everyone's left scrambling, trying to figure out like how to do some damage control. And then they just throw another wrench, you know, and everyone's chasing that wrench. Because they're saying it's not a war. because only Congress has the power. There's a lot of stuff that's packed in here that I know I've missed a lot, and I semi pay attention to this stuff in my day to day. And so I know that there's even more people that have missed even more than I have. My background is, I know we've talked about this before, but just to reiterate, like I have a double major in economics, political science, I have an MBA with 2 concentrations, like strategic management, policy, operations management. I also was going to school for nuclear engineering, then life happened, ended up doing some other stuff. So there's a lot to unpack with this. Just this administration as a whole, Congress from day one, within the first couple months of his presidency, went on the news and said, we actually are not going to be a check and balance to him. We actually enjoy what he's doing. So we're not going to, because they were called out on the fact that he was taking matters into his own hands with numerous policies that were unconstitutional.
Tons of executive orders, right?
Yeah. And so, but they were like, well, we're not going to stop him, and so it's just like, well, shit, so now fast forward to now, like the power of Congress is to declare war. The president cannot declare war. Like they can do interventions which can last weeks or what have you, but like every president has done that. It doesn't matter if you're left or right, like every president has done that. And people who are upset with those types of things are upset with all presidents doing it, not just left or right. Because Obama did it in like 7 different countries, I believe, and
right.
So it's
so it's not just this administration, but it also sounds like it rings true back to Vietnam. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a war, that was a conflict because Congress never okayed it.
Yeah. So that's the hiccup here, right? Is that, but Congress has actually said, Lindsey Graham was just on the news 2 days ago. And he was just like, I'm going to go back to my constituents and ask them I'm going to encourage them to get their sons and daughters to join the military and fight.
God.
Then you've got, the administration saying, we might do a draft, we might not.
Right.
But then, so all of that muddy water in there, right? But then you actually get to the truth of like why we got involved. According to, Mark Wayne and to Rubio and to Hegseth and to Trump, is that we believed that we knew that Israel was going to attack Iran. And so Iran was going to do a retaliatory attack and attack us. So we preemptively attacked even before Israel attacked. Okay. So that's the line, that's the story we're being told now. Like, will they change that? Yeah, right. It's like, Ender's Game thing, where it's just like, well, they're amassing, because that's the other thing. Well, they're amassing like all these missiles and drones. Like, why would they do that? And then you actually look at a map and we have their entire country surrounded by military bases, entire country. So it's just like, well, yeah, no shit, they're building up defenses. Like, we would do the same thing,
right.
Like, how is that? But there's a lot of people who are like, they don't see that. And they're just like, oh, well, I can't believe they're doing this.
Right.
Well, what should they should just, lay down and die? Like, what would you do as an American, right? Like, just as a human, take away the label of country. Like, what would you do? Like, would you just lay down and die? Like, no.
Surrounded, right? Yeah.
So, but yeah, so there's a lot of, they're trying to muddy the waters with different things, but that's the actual like reasoning they gave us on national news and in the press,
right?
Was that Israel was going to attack and Iran was going to retaliate and attack us. So we had to attack even before Israel attacked.
So we want to get retaliated on because it seems it's becoming
we started
knowledge that we always but it seems to be becoming public knowledge that us and Israel are very hand in hand in a lot of things. You know what I mean?
I think it's more of I wouldn't even say hand in hand. I think Israel like would be in charge.
Okay.
So like I wouldn't even say we're hand in hand.
Okay,
like
good. No, I'm with you on that.
They're the leader of it, right?
Yes.
And more people are becoming aware of APAC and how many billions we give them. They have universal health care. They have universal education. They have
They
a
have the
higher
second Bill of
standard of
Rights.
living than us.
Huh?
Yeah, they have all that, and we fund it. Like, so I think a lot of people
And
are
that's
becoming
regardless
aware
of
of that.
color. That's not blue or red. That's across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah, it is. So a lot of politicians that are running for office now, one of their like badges of honor is saying, I received no funding from APAC. So then they can actually like get some more support from that, because a lot of people are getting tired of that.
Right.
Um,
And it's
but
funny
the
how you
Iran
kind of
thing,
see
yeah,
the current administration turn against those too. That, he starts talking shit about the people that are not taking that IPAC money and bragging about it, like Massey, right? Isn't he the most recent one? Where him and I
Yeah.
thought Trump were pretty tight at one point, but now Massey's like, I'm not taking
Yeah.
any Israel money, and Trump, oh, Massey's this and Massey. It's like, really? It's I don't know. I've been saying this, but it seems less and less hidden what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like more, it's coming out more and
Yeah.
more, faster and faster, and I think it's for a reason, personally.
Well, right now, so just like with Venezuela, right? Like they did not hide it. So they said all this, right? So they gave us that line about Israel and Iran retaliating.
Right.
Then they just recently in this past week are like, well, we are going to destroy everything except for the oil. Except for the oil.
Right.
Like we're going to yeah. So like that's ultimately what it's about. Like, so they tried to play, like coy with it and be like, oh, defenders of freedom. And then, like he's doing his normal thing of like talking a ton of rhetoric and being like, we're gonna destroy everything. And then of course he has to walk it back and be like, well, not the oil. And it's like, oh, well, there's the true line. Like right there. We're caring about the oil. In Venezuela, he didn't even bother hiding it at all. Like he had the oil execs in the Oval Office. Like we found out through leaked documents that he met with the oil execs about Venezuela before he even met with our intelligence apparatus. So like didn't even give two shits about like trend or like trying to hide it. Like, and a lot of comedians like late night TV show hosts and stuff are saying at least do the decency like other presidents and lie to us. Like you're not even like
Find
all
some
these past
uranium.
conflicts have all these past conflicts have been all based on lies and just about grabbing oil and resources and money for the military industrial complex. So the least you could do is at least make living better here. Like we're not getting, and I think that's where a lot of Americans are. They've always been fed up with it, but at least there was, even if it was little, there was some kind of trade-off
Right.
to the bullshit. Like we'll put up with the bullshit because we've got the higher standard of education, higher standard of living. The American dream is achievable, and it's no longer that way anymore.
No.
And they're not even trying to lie to us anymore. So it's just like, man, you're just like pouring salt like into so many wounds here, so like we need some kind of change. So
But that's what's leading me to believe it's intentional. And I think it's pushing in this conspiracy stuff, but I'm going to say it. I think it's leading to that police state that we talked about before. I think it's leading to either a civil war or a revolution or any reason for the American government to become a police state, for it to become more dictatorship. And whether that's under Trump or whether that's under Rubio or what's his nuts, vice president guy? Vance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whoever it's under, it's going to be under somebody. And I don't see like the left coming out of it and saying, okay, no, we're not doing that. We're going to stay. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there's going to be a rescue from it.
No. So
and it really seems like it's pushing the American people that way.
So I would kind of agree on that, because what we as a nation, like have said we want, especially on the right, they were like, well, trust and believe the police, right? So like the police are saying like, we need help with this X, Y, and Z. They're not listening. They're doing their own thing. Like ICE is not the answer to any of the problems that the police forces were having. Not at all. It's a political answer to made up stuff, right?
Yeah.
We have tons of citizens that commit a ton of heinous crimes, and they're constantly getting away with it because we're too distracted by all kinds of bullshit, right? right? So eventually end up like with a RoboCop scenario where we have like these AI bots, you know, like policing our streets, you know, because humans are going to end up get to a certain point where they're going to choose empathy over anger, and we're going to start looking out for each other more, and that's not going to sit well with the people that want control. So
Or they're going to use it.
all all this hate and division,
Safety and security, right?
Yeah. Well, because if you create hate and diversion, it's easier to rule with fear than
Right.
it is. It's it's like that old saying about like, you know, burning down. It could take you months to build a building. You can burn it down in one night.
Right.
You know, like, so like actually like building stuff and repairing things is hard, which is why over the past, you know, couple presidencies, like we're not really seeing that happening, whether it's Congress stopping it or it's a combo of an administration plus Congress like not having it happen. You know, we are in some dire straits with that, but you know, that's a whole other topic. You know, for the Iran stuff, it definitely was planned. It was not planned by our intelligence agencies. It was not planned by our actual like generals. It wasn't planned by anybody. Because like
And
right
our
now they're trying to
CEOs.
sell this thing with, oh well, we have to go in boots on the ground, even though they said they were never going to do that. We
Right.
have to go in because they're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. It was
Right.
like, well, if you listen to the intelligence apparatus, they would have told you that was 100% guarantee that was going to happen. Like they absolutely were going to shut that down, and they control it. Like they've spent decades building their drone and tons of capabilities to outlast us in a fight. And they knew this day would come eventually. And no other president, and this is a saying that a lot of people of his supporters are, no other presidents would do this. So this is amazing that he's finally doing it. And it's like, well, no other president would do it because they knew that it was like another Vietnam, another Korea, another just lists. Go down a list of things that we got involved in where we didn't fully understand it. And that was with listening to our intelligence apparatus and
Right.
listening to our allies. He has alienated us from our allies. He's not listening to the intelligence reports because even just 3 days ago, Tulsi Gabbard came out and said, we still, to date, have no evidence that they were even remotely close to building any nuclear weapons.
Right. Yep.
Like, so she just said that like 3 days ago, you know, but they were trying to throw that out there too. Well,
Yeah.
they were 2 weeks away. And the
Yeah, but
Canadian
they've
was just
shown
like, they've
when
been
they were
2 weeks
doing
away
that.
for 10 years.
Yeah, because when they were doing that, they would show clip after clip of Netanyahu every 5 years or so. They're a year away from
Yeah.
nuclear technology, and then 10 years go by. They're a year away from that. You know what I mean? And he was feeding the same stuff. Now it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is the broken record that's just not going to play anymore. And it's just, but I mean, to me, that all ties in with it. You know what I mean? I really think the misinformation and I think anti-Semitism has risen in the last year or so, couple of years, in that I think there's starting to be a different, people are starting to realize there's a difference between Jews and Zionists or whatever you know what I mean? And that there's a difference between the people that are making the calls, running the shots. They're not biblical Jews. So even the Christians, I think that were on top, like, hey, we need to protect Israel. We need to help Israel. They're our brothers. I think they're starting to even change away from that, which is funny, except for the ones that think that Jesus sent Trump. Because Trump is obviously a very clear indicator of who Jesus was. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You got to have multiple affairs, multiple marriages, talk very,
no empathy
very,
whatsoever.
very sexually about your own kid.
Yep.
And, you know, Jesus,
yeah,
you know, spitting image. So,
yeah. And so, yeah, they're the ones that are going to say, well, yeah, Israel's still our friend. We still need to protect Israel. Because look at the Bible.
Yeah, no.
Like, yeah, but the Bible also says there's no more Jew or Gentile. But so why are we still doing that? Why are we still defending people that just seem to be bringing bloodshed and chaos wherever they go? And you look at the history of these things and countries they've been kicked out of, and yeah, it's a playbook. It's definitely a playbook.
I have learned quite a bit about this over time now because of all the different influencers and news outlets trying to get information out there about this. Because like the West Bank, where Israel is, that's not even the largest population of Jews. It's
Oh,
actually in Russia. Like I
Hmm.
didn't know that. You know, like because you never hear about it because Israel is constantly like dominating the global stage. And then another aspect to it too is just like how I guess tying into that with our news, right? So the FCC, just came out and said that they're going to, because they wanted to prove how independent they are from the Trump administration. And they just came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and they said that Brendan Carr, by tweet said, "Hey, we're considering pulling people's licenses if they're going to continue to report our involvement in Iran in a negative manner."
yep.
Wow.
Obviously, like it's a little more wordy than that, so there's some like legal, you know, ambiguity to it, but it's very tongue in cheek where it's like, hey, similar with the Stephen Colbert thing, where it's just like, hey, you want this deal to go through, it'd be in your best interest to like kind of put a muzzle on, Stephen Colbert. And then when they're questioned on it, like, well, did you tell them to fire him? No, I didn't say that. I just said that, so like he has a way of wording things to where it's not like technically breaking the law, but he's influencing them in their decision making.
Right.
And that already is like ethically and morally wrong, especially for, an oversight agency. It should not be doing that. So, but yeah, they just came out and said, so that's kind of this America First agenda, along with, American exceptionalism. Like we can't do anything wrong,
Right.
So we have to constantly promote that we're amazing and we're the best. Like there was that report that said like we were running out of munitions like already. And of course Trump came out and was like, we have enough munitions for a forever war. So it's like instead of like actually having a sensible conversation and being like, look, I hear your concerns. I'm not going to go into the specifics of stockpiles and stuff like that for national security. Now he comes out and acts like a brat, and he's just like, "We have enough. How dare you question us?
Yeah.
Like we have enough for forever war."
I feel like this
Oh,
is Trump's modus operandi for forever. Like his
mhm.
casinos were the best, his school was the best, his steaks were the best, but it's really all shit.
His country's the best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
But I could see that because
yeah.
he's trying to, when he says make America great again, I think he's thinking like the 80s, under
Well, that's
Reagan
what's
and
perfect about that
the
slogan.
trickle down economics. Because even his first term, he
Yeah,
used those exact words. I'm
hmm
bringing back trickle down economics, and he
yeah,
wants to restore it to that where the CEOs and everything else started gaining their power enormously during Reagan's
yeah,
run. And I think that's what he was talking about. Not a time when America flourished after World War II and well, the white man flourished after World War II.
yeah.
And you know what I mean? I don't think that's what he was talking about as much as he was talking about, hey, the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer, just like it was in the 80s under Reagan. And I think that's what that
So
looks
John
like what he's
Stewart did a
doing.
good job on that. Like
Did he?
so,
I like
yeah.
John
So
Stewart.
like, just in general, right? Like I've said this for a while too, and it's a pretty good example of like how you can phrase something that is so vague, but it resonates with so many people. Make America great again.
Right.
What does that mean, right? Like that means something different for everybody,
It does.
right? Which is actually like if you're actually trying to do like run a country, shit, run a small business. It doesn't even have to be a country. Do you want that much gray area in understanding your actual like agenda? No, you don't. So why people love it so much is because it's just simple. Everyone can have their own feel good thing in their heart and in their mind about what that means. But at the end of the day, all that matters is their actions because
Right.
it's not what you think America was great, it's what they think America was great. So their actions are going to show what they actually believe to be when America was great. Because like Jon Stewart did a good piece, because like, and he had like the different mustaches and hats and stuff. Because like, and several different interviews over the course of months, like when Trump was asked, like, what does that mean? He would bring up different time frames where it'd be all the way back to like the robber barons, you know, and the
Wow.
robber barons were called that because they weren't particularly liked, you know.
Right.
So, and essentially like that's how we actually, our foundational of our whole infrastructure is like based off of that.
Yep.
We didn't have
Carnegie's
so a
and
lot
the
of people don't know
Rockefellers.
there's vertical and horizontal monopolies, and there's natural monopolies, there's duopolies, like all kinds of stuff, like, and there was none of that before the robber barons. And essentially they came together. The Roosevelt at the time was just like, hey, you know, if we don't actually like take care of this, like we're looking at potentially like civil conflict, because four people had more wealth than the rest of the nation combined,
Yep.
and they owned literally everything. You know, like if they wanted to move their steel from the warehouse that they owned, well, first of all, they own like the pit where they got the ore. Then they
Right.
own the smelting plant. Then they own the processing plant. Then they were like, well, we need a
Build a
train.
train. Yep.
Buy out. Well,
Railroad.
what they did was is because they were so wealthy. Well, one of them, like, was so wealthy because not all of them were into the same things. Hence why they could all dominate, you know. But like they wanted to, they were so wealthy from, you know, product A, that they were like, well, I'm gonna buy this train, or I bought out the company, the computer, but this isn't actually the line that I want. I want that line, but he's not selling to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower this to almost be free. I'm just going to like take a negative on this thing to the point where they lose customers.
Yep.
And then eventually they have to sell to me. And then I get the line going to where I actually want. And that's
Yep.
what they would do. Like,
And we
because they
think,
had all the power and control.
right.
And so
And we think
we moved
Walmart
away from
came
that.
up with that.
Yeah, no,
No,
like
not at all.
we moved away from that, but in the process of that, the Fed was created, and then like all these different laws. So similar with the health insurance companies, right? With the ACA, they were invited to a closed door meeting. Like it was actually designed to where they wouldn't actually lose anything, but it was the illusion that, you know, things were better, and things were better in a sense, right? But it could be way better, but it's better than
Yeah.
what it was. And so same thing with that, you know, like we didn't have all these laws, we created all these laws, but those robber barons didn't all of a sudden become poor. Like they didn't just lose their money. Like they still were involved in all kinds of different things. They just had LLCs now, and they had different faces on different things. And so they were still making their money. It just was no longer just so obvious. And so we were
So it's
able to
very,
design a mask.
very obvious when the Fed was created and when Social Security and all that stuff came. Well, that was later on. But when the Fed
Yeah.
was created, isn't that when certain tax laws, that's when the income tax was born. That's when a lot of things
Yeah.
were born, was a result of the 1913 Fed, and our Constitution reflected that, which is really
Yeah.
odd. You know what I mean? If you think about it. But yeah, I like that. And the Fed is a privately owned company. Has nothing to do
Yeah,
with
we
the
can never
government.
audit them. Yeah.
Nope.
So
So it's
a lot of interesting stuff with that. But
yeah.
yeah, it's what we
Goes
have
back
now
to the
is,
Titanic.
yeah, we basically have that. We're actually, our wealth gap is worse now than it was then,
Right.
you know, with the robber barons and the population.
And they're
And
very touted
so
now.
yeah. And so there's a couple different ways that you can look at the way we're behaving as a nation right now, with because Trump actually, you know, we're an oligarchy. A lot of people, Bernie Sanders has been saying it since the 60s, right? Like, but even in my poli-sci class, when we're studying like other countries, stuff like that, like the rest of the world has known we're an oligarchy. Like, but the propaganda here doesn't allow us to believe that until recently, right? So in recent times, in the past 5 years, that term has been thrown around so much, you know, that we're an oligarchy. Like it's now becoming mainstream and known that like, hey, you know, but the difference between, you know, the way that things were handled before, whether it was Democrat or Republican, was that they had stability, you know, so it didn't matter. Like their social policies would change, but both sides constantly voted to not take more money from the rich. They both voted to spend more money on defense. They both, like, so really it was the differing in social programs for them. And but they created stability for the stock market and the elites that wanted that, so but then Trump comes along and he's like, I really don't give a shit about stability. Like, you all know I called it a swamp. Well, I'm just gonna actually like be the ogre in the swamp and actually like live in it, like, so he's got like all the billionaires showing up to his inauguration. He's got, all this stuff that he's just out in the open about. And I've heard some of his supporters were like, well, the left did it. It's like, well, this is no longer left and right, like this is a whole different beast. And once that cat is out of the bag, how do we get it back in?
Right.
So this goes back to your thing about like the police state. Like, if the police state does come, which ICE allegedly has been building detention centers all over the country, which doesn't really add up to the sheer amount of illegal immigrants that they keep saying is around. Even with that number, like the sheer amount of detention centers that, according to paperwork, they may not be built yet, but what they're proposing to build outnumbers, the number of illegals. So like, well, what is the intention of that? Right. And we don't really have an answer. So that's like the part that's like a little alarming.
All right.
So whether they'll actually be built, we'll see. But yeah, that thing where we go, if they end up creating that police state with ICE, as just say if that were to happen, not saying it's going to, right? But just say it does. Do we really believe that the next people that get in power are just going to immediately rip that away?
Nope.
Like, I don't, and I think that even if we go back to the old ways, which is not what people want. So that's kind of like how we ended up in this predicament, is Trump won because people were sick of the status quo between left and right. Trump is not of either party. Trump is an opportunist, and he's going to take advantage. Right now, it's estimated there are over $4 billion for him and his family that they've made just off of this presidency, just in 1 year.
Not the first one.
Wow.
I
believe. I have to go back and double check that. So let me make a note of that. But they've made billions, since being in office. Jared Kushner is doing the negotiations for Iran.
Yeah.
He's a real estate mogul. Like, what does he have to do with like international policy, nuclear energy, like nuclear weapons? Like, what does he know about that?
Real estate's involved in it.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Real estate's going to be involved
and also
in
the
it.
cultural aspects. Yeah. All the different cultural aspects of that region. Like, what does he know about that? Nothing. And so yeah, it's just pretty wild how that's all unfolding. But
so one of the things I heard, and I think this was on a more Trump supporting side of things, is about the oil. It is about the oil. It's always about the oil, because our economy was built on gold at one point. We talked about this. I think we touched on it, and then it was shifted over to oil, and now it's still kind of under the oil thing, except for what they decide to print out randomly whenever they want to.
But we're a fiat currency now.
A fiat.
So it went from gold to fiat. So fiat is basically, to put it in a non, like educational format, like if we believe in it, it has power. Right. So actually that's really all, that's actually like all that is, right? So it's just it's a currency not backed up by anything. It's a currency, it's a currency backed up by those that believe in it, right? So, but even gold is that way in a sense, but gold is a material thing that you can touch and hold. Fiat is not. So like, you can arbitrarily print as much as you want, but at the same time there will be consequences, because you have inflation, deflation, you have
shrinkflation,
all that type of stuff.
But part of that deal is that oil was dealt with in the American dollar, and if you didn't, you needed to deal. If you wanted oil, you had to use the American dollar, which gave it its value, because it was being used on the global market for oil. Well, so there are countries that are trying,
and it expanded to any trade. Anything
oh, did it?
So
it wasn't just oil anymore. Okay. And so, from what I understand, like BRICs is one of them, right? That's Russia and North Korea and India, or I don't know, Japan, China. They're
Yeah,
trying to come up. They're trying to do their own currency to get away from the American dollar. And so they were trying to just trade oil with Venezuela, with Iran, in this currency that's knocking out the American dollar. Well, that was part of the, well, let's take over these two countries with the biggest oil reserves ever so we can maintain the American dollar as the trading currency. And so I don't know
So
if
what we
that's not
call it
like
is
he
the
was actually
reserve currency.
saving it. Like that's what they're saying. That side, he's saving us by doing this, which I don't believe Trump saves anything for anything, but that's what that leaning side is saying that, well, Trump had to go into Iran so we can maintain the dollar on the oil and we can have control over that and we won't get shut out by China and Russia and all this.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any truth to that.
BRICS is trying to do that. Whether we invaded these countries for that purpose, I mean, it is a concern. So our intelligence agencies have said this, like we call it the reserve currency. So after World War II, we were the reserve currency of the world, and that's actually how like a lot of countries throughout history have like maintained power.
Right.
If people are using your currency, then like even if you're having some dips, like you still have the longevity of it. And we're no longer the only, depending on who you ask, right? Like we're no longer the only superpower anymore. Like there's other players in this field. And so like we have the strongest military, but a lot of people don't realize we don't make really any of the parts in house.
Yeah.
Like, so there was this old meme that went around for the longest time, like 15 years ago, where it was a cartoon where just one picture and it showed, like if, America went to war against the world, how long do you think we'd last? And then, eventually, because I always thought it was bullshit, because I was in the military and I know that we don't actually make any of this stuff. I mean, it's no different than the civilian side of things either. Like we have to make, people feel better about how we import everything. They would come up with stickers that said assembled in America and they'd
Right.
slap it on stuff.
Right.
Like just to
designed,
make people happy.
designed in California.
Like it, yeah, it wasn't made here, it was assembled here. Like all the components are assembled, made someplace else. And same is true to the military as well. And so like when that meme, eventually someone updated it and was just like, considering this fact, we would probably not last long at all, because how rough and tough we are on our equipment, it's constantly in the bay, like getting worked on,
Right.
like the mechanics bay. And so it's like constantly getting worked on. So I mean, like if all of a sudden we go to war with the rest of the country, the rest of the world, they're just going to stop sending us parts. And their stuff will come to like a grinding halt. Like it doesn't matter how many ships and planes we have if we can't fly them to conflict, if we can't like go in our ships, if we can't drive our Humvees, so there's a lot of back to that American exceptionalism thing where it's just like no one can touch us. Well, that's not true. Like a lot of our stuff was built
Not
on
anymore.
partnerships.
Yeah.
Well, right. Well, but the thing is for decades it was partnerships. Like yes, there was adversaries, but like we had all these global networks where we didn't have to worry about things. But now we do, because now it's just like we have numerous people in charge. So I'm not going to pin this all on Trump, because we even got the, Rubio, we've got Hegseth, we've got, members of Congress who are talking shit about our allies, who are saying that we are the bee's knees, like no one can touch us. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Well, you think Trump has allowed
right
that?
Now, yeah, absolutely.
Not allowed it, but like not instigated, but even inspired it. Like here's Trump doing his thing, just being Trump, and they're all like, "Oh, well, I'm going to be bold too. I'm going to," and they're starting to do their thing. So,
well, that's why there's another aspect to this where, in political science and just in conversations in general, you kind of wonder what's going to happen to the Republican Party once he's gone.
Right.
Because they've said that, like no one can be like Trump. And we've seen this.
Right.
Like we've seen politicians of the right go out and try to do what he does, which is when you go back and you watch, whether people, his supporters want to admit it or not, like he's a schoolyard bully. Like on those podiums when he's like doing the debates. So
Yep.
he's up there, he's saying like people's wives look like dogs.
Yeah.
Not even debating the actual like policies. He's just going up there and just like talking smack
Personal
about
attacks.
people's families. Yeah, personal attacks. That's it. And so
Sorry to laugh, man,
what's
but I
gonna
mean that's when he got
but it's a
elected,
weird
dude. Growing up in the '80s, I'm like, this guy is our president. Like Donald
Yeah.
Trump is really. It's like I'm really not surprised, but I am. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god,
Right.
dude.
So but that's where we're like, what's going to happen after he's gone? Because when you see other politicians get up and they try to do the same exact thing, even MAGA is just like, no,
Right.
like, ew, like fucking get away from us, man.
You're a poser.
And yeah, exactly. And they're just like, what the hell? And so they don't even support it. But he's not going to live forever, you know? So it's just like, well, who's taking his place to fill the void of doing that? You know, because for a lot of them, they view the world as black and white.
Right.
It's only gray for the areas that matter to them. There is no need for empathy for things that do not directly impact them. And so it's just this weird thing where it's just like, what is going to happen? There's going to be a power vacuum essentially for that demographic of people. There are people like Massey who are part of the old Republican Party who are like starting to become the champion of it and try to come out and hopefully like pull and recover the Republican Party once Trump is gone. You know, because who knows what Vance and Rubio and all of them are going to do once Trump is gone? Are they going to continue? Because like you look back 6 years, you know, like Rubio and Vance and all them were constantly like, this is unconstitutional,
Right.
like this is bullshit, what Trump
Yep.
is doing, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
And
dude,
now
then Vance
they're
becomes
just
his
like,
VP. Like, how does that
yeah,
work?
and now they're like doing the song and dance for him.
Yep.
And they know that they're violating the Constitution, and they know because they've been asked. Even the Supreme Court came out and ruled against them on several things. And when they were asked if they were going to actually follow through and do what the Supreme Court said, they were like, no, because the powers that would keep them in check is Congress.
Right.
And Congress has already said that as long as they hold power, as long as Republicans hold power, they're not going to do anything to impede Trump. And he has so much sway over them still that if he chooses a different candidate over them, the Republicans will just become feral and like
Right.
support this new person and like disavow
Throw him under the
this
bus.
other person.
They'll be
Maybe
looking.
another Trump.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is like a perfect example. Like she was an avid Trump supporter, like diehard MAGA. She gets in
Huge.
there. They fuck up the Epstein stuff amazingly. And she's like calling them out on it. And now his slogan for her is Marjorie Trader Green.
Yep.
Or actually, he said Marjorie Trader Brown because green, when it rots, turns brown. You know, and he actually explained the joke too. So,
wow.
yeah. So, like, that's the thing is like, if you go against him, like,
Yeah.
he's going to make sure that your political career is like over. So it's just kind of what's going to happen when he's gone. Like just thinking long term. Like even if you're a supporter of him, like who do you latch on to next?
And see, this is what I'm holding on to with this, and I believe because everybody's a player and everybody's an actor in the play, that the world's a stage, right? So Trump is here now when he's supposed to be because he is the one that could do these things. Nobody else is going to be as blunt, is going to be as non-apologetic as then nobody's going to do what he's able to do. And so by getting mass surveillance, by getting ICE out there, by just really showing the power he has, not even to other countries, but among Americans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's ushering in this possibility of absolute control. And then with the top surveillance going to Palantir, you know what I mean? We're going to be surveilled, if not already.
Not even that.
More than
that's part of it.
Right.
Did you see the most recent stuff with Hegseth?
No, I haven't.
In OpenAI?
No, what is that? I know what OpenAI is, but what is the recent stuff?
I'm trying to remember the other AI that was there before.
I think it was Claude.
It begins with a C. Claude, yes. Yep. So Claude said I mean, these documents became public. I don't know if they were supposed to or not, but like we found out that the Department of War, personally Hegseth, got involved in this and was just like, hey, we want to have you take the safeguards off, and we want to be able to do whatever we want with your software. And Claude's CEO was no, like we're specifically concerned about mass surveillance and autonomous weaponry, and we don't want that on our stuff. And so Trump came out and
Autonomous
they said,
weaponry. Oh my
so
God,
what
that
they
sounds
said,
bad.
this was 2 weeks ago, where the Trump administration, Trump personally, along with Hegseth, said they have until Friday. I believe this was 2 weeks ago. They have until Friday to say yes, or we're moving forward with a different AI. And Claude was like, all right, we're done. And so then the administration did their normal thing where they're just like, smear campaign, they suck, they're anti-American, because they're anti-Trump, they must be anti-American,
Right.
and all this type of stuff. And then now OpenAI has signed on, and OpenAI is now, after their stocks like plummeted after they signed on, they're trying to walk it back, where they're like, well, hold it, like we're gonna look at the contract. We say yes to the initial contract, but we're gonna look at this other stuff. So like we still don't know if OpenAI is gonna let them use their AI for facial recognition. And actually, who was it? Somebody was just, I'll have to look this up. I just saw this on the news. Someone was in an interview and they were saying, look, China's already doing this. They're already using mass surveillance. They're already using facial recognition. They're already using autonomous weaponry. So if we don't do it, then we're suckers.
Right.
Like, so someone from the administration just came out like and did an interview. I gotta find that though. So yeah, so like that is a whole other aspect along with the Palantir stuff, so we're in a very precarious situation, like, and we have an administration that's telling us literally, do not believe the news. Do not believe the videos. Listen to us. And if that's not some 1984 shit, I don't know
Right.
what is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but
Well,
I don't
David,
know, dude. I mean, the news, even after I think especially after, and I think that's all part of it too, even after COVID and all. Yeah, but and the misinformation and everybody having time to actually look into stuff and not just take
Yep.
everything at headline. I think that's really shifted, and we realized that you can't trust the media.
So I have something for that as well. I got a little piece to everything you're saying, man.
All right, let's break it out, man.
Do you know who Steve Bannon is?
Steve Bannon, I've heard of him. Yeah.
So under his first term, Trump's first term, he was the strategic or chief of strategy or something like that, some title. But he doesn't hide anything. So like that's the odd thing about this dude is like he doesn't really give a shit if you know his playbook.
Nope.
He said that was intentional. They're intentionally like doing so many things at once, so that way it's hard for people to pay attention. While you're distracted over here, they're now already moved on. They just did this over here just to distract you. They don't really give a shit about that. This is what they care about. And as soon as you catch on to that, they throw another thing out. He literally said that was their playbook.
flood the zone, right?
Yeah, flood it, right? So, and he also came out and said he's just in the news last month, or maybe even earlier this month. It feels like a year sometimes, and, like watching all this stuff. He just came out and said, like, we have ways to make a third term happen.
Yep.
So
yeah, and they've been saying that since his first term. They've been saying that.
Well, and that was his plan, Bannon's plan. And he said that he's already got lawyers like working up on drafting things. And a lot of people think, because he was on Jimmy Kimmel, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel or maybe Stephen Colbert, but he was just like, the host was like, well, haven't you heard of this amendment? Like, do you know how hard it is to change an amendment? And he's like, yeah, we're not worried about that. Because then later, Trump is saying we got to watch out for China rigging our elections. He's had numerous, the states of emergency that he's called, which were left unchecked. No one challenged those. They didn't make it far in court or even make it into court. you know, so like he's building these steps. And I've only heard one politician actually like address this, and that's Newsom, who is just like, what if we don't have elections? And everyone in the audience kind of laughed. And he was just like, I'm being serious. You know, like he's laying these bricks.
Wow. And
He's
that's
not
how they
gonna
do it, little by little.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it was the
So
same
it's
thing, like
acceptable.
not to compare Trump to Hitler, right? But like a lot of people forget the buildup. It wasn't that Hitler just came out and said like death to Jews. It was a build that took years.
Yep.
So like if you're in a position of authority and you're trying to make changes, like you're gonna lay these bricks to it. I'm not saying for all the Trump supporters that may or may not watch this, like
Right.
even if it was a left-leaning person, I'd be going after them as well. Like I'm after the truth is what I'm after. And I'm not saying that Trump is gonna go around exterminating people. Like, but what I'm saying is that like the
It's
reason
going to be
why
something
people
else.
try people try to draw those parallels is to look at the beginning stages of fascism. Every fascist leader has done something different with their populations. They're not, it's not but the building blocks are actually like turnkey. So like they're one and the same, like building up. What they do with it, they've all done similar or different things, right? So that's what we're looking at, is that he's done numerous states of emergency where he's been unchecked on those.
Yep.
Bannon, it was just in the news the other day where there's lawyers already drafting potential security threats to our elections. So we might not even, and Trump said himself, like, if we don't have integrity in our elections, then we just won't have them.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and how long he's he been saying that we don't have integrity in our elections?
Since
Years.
2016,
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Even before he ran. Yeah.
Yeah. So
talked
this
to
is
him
a
on
whole
talk
slow
shows.
walking buildup. Well,
That's what I'm
slow
saying. And that's
walking for the
why
actual work. He's been saying this stuff for years, you know.
that's why I
Yeah,
see this stuff playing out, and it's a long game. You know what I mean? It's a legacy game, and that's what the people and high up and the families that we were talking about earlier. That's what they all think about is legacy, and so
Yeah.
they're like the emperor, dude, from Star Wars. You know what I mean? They take the years and plan and move the pieces they need to move. So in 15 years, when they do this, it's not a surprise. It's not out of the norm. It's stuff that's led up to it. So what brought Trump in
Yeah.
is we had Obama, who kind of seemed like a weak president when it came to foreign affairs. And so we started, that was old propaganda on the right. We look stupid, we look foolish,
Yeah.
we look weak. And so then Trump comes along, I'm going to be the guy. And then he was, and then all that happened. And then we came back to the left again. Now the left's back in control and we're good. Well, they didn't have control because the right had their whatever. But then you see, of course, we're dealing with the aftermath of COVID, all the prices going up, which you can't blame on anybody. I mean, except for the people that plotted out COVID. That's my opinion. But you see
We
these
did have the
things. You
strongest
see these things
economy
building
in the
up
world after COVID.
after COVID.
Yeah. So we actually had the most, I guess, retention of stability after COVID.
Oh,
So,
compared
but
to
that's
like other
because,
countries, or
yeah, it's compared to other
okay,
countries like of our size. Like obviously you can't, you got to do like an equivalent
right.
comparison. But yeah, so no, yeah, that's why I was saying like earlier with Trump 1, people are sick of the status quo.
Right.
And honestly, I was not shocked at all that Trump won a second term.
Me neither.
Because what ended up happening is when he won and he started doing a bunch of crazy shit, people were like, okay, we wanted change, but not this type of
This
change.
much.
So then what ended up happening is the left won again because the Republicans were not putting up any other candidates because MAGA would not allow them to.
Right.
MAGA only wanted Trump. And there's a lot less MAGA now than there were then. But then Biden won.
But I also think the criticism from the left during Trump's first term and the nonstop bashing from them kind of helped his side a little bit.
Well,
kind of almost
I think
making
a lot
him
of
the underdog, or at least making him look like that. And I think that's part of the plan. And I think that was all like, this is what we're gonna do. I can see it. This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
we're gonna make this guy look great. He's gonna come in. He's gonna just change everything for the worse for our benefit. And then even if a new guy comes in, like you said, they're not going to relinquish anything. If we're under surveillance, if we're in a police state, if they have more power than they had before, the ruling side, they're not going to give that back up. Even if it is a blue leader coming in and they have the Congress, they have the House, they have the presidency, they're not going to give back what something they've already been given. Do you know what I'm saying? So we're already in
Yeah.
motion, and Trump was the perfect guy at the perfect time to make this crap happen because he's Trump, non-politician,
Well, I mean, that goes into
black and
what's
white.
happening
You know,
during.
very simply put. But
Well, that actually is backed up by what's happening during this term, where the politicians who have been around for years, some of them decades, have said they're not going to do their congressional duties because they actually agree with what Trump is doing. Even though he's violating like the Constitution in several different aspects, like the power of the purse, power of declaring war, like they're not going to stop him because they actually believe in what he's doing. So you're right. Like he's actually pushing forward pieces that they wanted to do, but couldn't because our pesky Constitution kept getting in the way. You know, so now that they own all three branches of government, there's nothing stopping them. And but the thing is when I was saying like with Biden won, the left tried to go back to the old ways.
right.
Well, people didn't want the old ways, which is how Trump won in the first place. So by putting Biden in and then just trying to go back as if nothing happened, like, oh, the 4 years, just whoops-a-daisy, let's go back to the old ways, everybody. Like, no one wanted that. And then on top of that, when they were like, oh, well, Biden is doing amazing. And it wasn't until Jon Stewart came back and on his first day, like people were praising him on the left in Congress about him coming back and starting his show up again, or not starting his show up. It was still going, but he came back to do Monday nights. In his very first episode, he ragged on Biden. And he was just like, yeah, Trump sucks. We all know that. But what the fuck is going on with Biden?
Right.
You know, like he is so, you know, he's so fog-brained and out there that he shouldn't be doing this. You know, and for the fact that the left was saying that he was completely healthy, he was going to be running an office again, you know, and it was in Trump. I mean, Jon Stewart called them out on that. And what was funny is the next day, those same members of Congress that were like, yay, he's back. They were like, you should have never come back.
Right.
And then shortly after that, it started to creep into the mainstream where the left was questioning Biden's acuity. Like, does he actually have the mental acuity to do this? Like, is he actually like fit for office, health wise? And then eventually they were like, okay, you know, because his administration were still like, yes, he is, yes, he is. And then eventually they're like, yeah, he's not going to run anymore. Like, he actually is, you know, like got some. And then they just released some of his health conditions like last year, you know, so he's not doing so well with health. But it was just like, well, but yeah, so like the left went from like, let's go back to the normal to like, oh, we're going to lie to everybody about what's right in front of them. Because we expected that. Unfortunately, like it came to be an expectation from Trump,
Right.
you know. So, and the left was constantly dogging them about all the lies and obvious lies that they were telling. For then the left to also do that, then it was like, come on, man. And so when they did the switcheroo with Kamala, it was like, you guys already have secured Trump's like win. Like this is like you guys have done it,
Right.
you know. So then of course
Like it was planned.
and he's
Right?
got his health issues, and they're all lying about that. Like, oh, he has no health issues. His ankles are swollen. He's fallen asleep in meetings. He's got bruises all over his hands, you know. And it's just like, which is expected for someone of his age, but it's just like, take a nap. Well, I mean, he does, but like, stop doing it during meetings. You know,
Right.
like just go enjoy retirement, man.
Yeah, go play
You know,
golf, man.
but yeah, so well, he does that a lot too.
Yeah, no.
But you know, to bring it all back to like the Iran stuff, and I know you want to talk about another topic as well, right?
Some of the the Epstein files, some of the stuff
The
with
Epstein
that coming out with that.
So-
I mean, it's a lot, but
Epstein and Iran, like a lot of people are like saying Iran is a distraction from the Epstein files. Actually, I just saw, I have to verify if this is true, but the DOJ apparently came out and said, you know, due to national security and other things happening right now, like we're not going to be releasing any more documents.
right. And it's still
they're
half of them
referring
left.
to the Iran stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
had over 6 million documents And here's the thing about both both instances that are happening. You know, like when I did my poli-sci degree, we studied a lot of old wars and stuff like that because it takes roughly 50 years for things to be declassified. And there's
Right.
still some aspects of some conflicts that are still have a certain percentage tucked away still. Same thing with Iraq and Afghanistan. Like there's going to be things that come out later where people are going to be.
All right. Well, this is running a little long. We do love having Tom on with us, but because this is, you know, we have a lot to talk about, we're going to take a break right here and then continue on with this interview, and we'll get that aired at a separate episode. So, Tom, once again, thank you for talking with us. Radu, thank you for all the work you do. And viewers, please tune in next week. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, share, and we're going to keep moving on forward with this. Thank you very much from Three Minds, One Mic. So, all right. Once again, from Three Minds, One Mic, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Radu, Tom, thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
You all have a good night.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Our
You
pleasure.
bet.